He's the popular Shaun O'Hara, NFL Network analyst and former Giants offensive lineman who joins us on the program. You can follow NFL Network. They have Good Morning Football, and that'll be a game day morning, I should say. Airs Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern on NFL Network with the popular host, Rich Eisen. And Shaun joins us now. Good morning, Shaun. How's morale?
Top of the morning to you, Danny. Doing great, man. I mean, it's just not the best time of the year for football, and we got golfers talking trash. I love it. I love it. Look, when people say six-pack, it's funny. Some people think abs. I think beer.
Oh, well, we were talking about Brooks Koepka was called out by Bryson DeChambeau saying, and they went back and forth about slow play. Koepka has no patience for somebody who is slow, and DeChambeau is a workout guy, and then he calls out Brooks Koepka and says, hey, I don't even think he has a six-pack. Koepka then sends 4 trophies from his majors, and he said, you're right, I don't have a six-pack. I'm too shy of a six-pack, and he shows these 4 majors that he's got. That's an unbelievable burn. That's unbelievable.
That's awesome. And Brooks got some pipes, too. You know, I mean, forget about the abs. You know, I mean, he's rocking some medium shirts with some, and they look like the Ultimate Warrior at the sleeve.
We were talking about field goals here. What if I said you could get rid of a field goal? You could only have a field goal in the final 60 seconds of a game, or get rid of it altogether, but you have to go for it on 4th down or punt it.
So you get rid of the field goal during the majority of the game, and you can only use the field goal within the last, what do you say, minute?
60 seconds.
Okay. Last minute of the game.
Or you have to go for it or punt. That's your only 2 options during the game.
Sure. Yeah, let's give it a whirl. Let's see what happens. I mean, I tell you what, we're already mad enough at kickers if they miss the kick, but now you're going to ask a kicker to not kick a field goal for 59 minutes. No PATs, you're saying? No field goals, nothing, and then all of a sudden he's got to go and kick a game winner, like dry ice. Basically, that's his first kick of the game. I doubt kickers would be very thrilled with that. Ask Pat McAfee how he feels.
What if it was a player's vote? Get rid of field goals. Just get rid of field goals completely.
I'm all for it. You know, look, I love my kickers. Listen, I was a long snapper, so I was a part of the battery. High school, college, I was the backup long snapper throughout my NFL career with the Browns and the Giants. So I do love some kickers, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to just saying, look, you either score a touchdown, you go for 2, or you either get it or you don't. Like let's go back to Rutgers versus Princeton. You know, let's bring it back to the glory days.
150 years ago. Your thoughts when you heard that Luke Kuechly had retired?
Man, I mean, the guy's alive and hopefully he's well, but it sure felt like that was it. You know, people told me when I was playing that NFL players, football players die twice. You know, and man, I was sad. You know, I was sad that we wouldn't get to watch him anymore. I was really, my heart ached for him when I saw the video, because I know, you know, any NFL player that's ever had to utter those words, I'm going to retire from football. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to watch somebody else do it. So, look, I don't really even know Luke Kuechly personally, but I feel like I do, just from, you know, watching him in the NFL, and that was painful. It hurt. It was also, at the same time, a really brutal reminder of how violent the game is, and how hard it can be physically when you're taking those beatings. And listen, nobody takes a bigger beating than running backs and middle linebackers.
Well, your job calls for a collision on every play. As you know, you being an offensive lineman, your collisions are tighter. You're still having a collision. You know, the linebacker he's looking for contact. Not the other, you know, not a lot of other positions are going, boy, I'm looking for a car crash here. And I did talk to a Hall of Fame defensive player yesterday who said in the last year and a half, Luke Kuechly was not bringing the contact that he once did, that he was trying to play differently. And that's when it's time to retire, because, you know, that's just not who you are. And I think that Luke Kuechly realized that, you know what, I don't need to have a collision on every play, but that's the position I'm playing in. So I wasn't surprised.
I watched a couple of plays this morning, actually, just kind of, from this season, and I think it seemed like there were times where he would come up, and early on in his career, he made that tackle and didn't even think twice about it. And there were times this season, just from watching a couple plays, that it seemed like he was hesitant to come up and run through the tackle like he had been before. And if that's showing up on film, imagine what's going on in his mind at that moment as he's coming up to make the tackle. Do I turn my head to the right? Do I turn to the left? I don't want to, he was trying to protect himself from the concussions, and it was clearly affecting his play. So, the one thing we know about those, and you actually used the proper word, because people say football is a contact sport. It's not a contact sport. Basketball is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. Mm-hmm. And the collisions, what we know now, which we didn't know 10, 15 years ago, collisions are cumulative. And those impacts, they add up. And it's not just one hit that creates the damage. It's the cumulative effect of it.
But how do you know you're okay, Shaun?
I don't. If you ask my wife, she'd probably say I'm not.
But do you care to know? If I said you could find out, because I know that you can't, I don't know if they can test for CTE yet while somebody's still alive, but, how concerned are you about, the aftershocks?
I'll say this: there's much more concern on the other end. Once you've retired and you start to take assessment of what you just put your body through. You start just kind of thinking about long term. And look, I'll say this: there aren't many 27, 28-year-olds in any workforce that are thinking about, boy, how am I going to feel when I'm 40? At 27, 28, people are grinding away, trying to make a career in some way, shape, or form. So you're not thinking about that long term, but it's definitely a thought. And when you retire from football, you start thinking about, man, all of a sudden my back is really bothering me. And it's like, you know what? Okay, all those years of doing this or that has a cumulative effect. I think the brain aspect of it, we have all changed the way that we think of it. Now something you may just say, well, I forgot my keys, or you hear guys talking about, look, I've got some anxiety issues, or I'm having mood swings. It used to just be, well, you're just getting crotchety, and you're just a dad with 3 kids. But now it's, you kind of start thinking, all right, is this more? And I think as a player, I think sending guys to the doctor to find out what's going on upstairs, that's tough. That's a tough conversation. But I do think that now with medicine, and there are ways that you can try to, help the brain heal. If you are suffering from CTE, or if you're showing early signs of this stuff, there are things you can take. There are supplements. There are procedures and things that you can do to kind of help regenerate some of that tissue. So I would definitely be an advocate for trying to find out how we can help that out. And try to find some improvement there.
He's Shaun O'Hara, NFL Network analyst, and won a Super Bowl with the Giants. You were there when Eli got to the Giants after saying that he did not want to play for the Chargers. We were wondering, if you're Joe Burrow, would you say, and you got one shot at this, would you say to the Bengals, I don't want you to draft me?
Ooh. That's a great question. I think Carson Palmer would have some really good insight on that. They forced him into retirement, and then he came back to play for the Raiders, so that tells you all you need to know. Look, Eli took a lot of heat, and I'll say this. If he didn't have an older brother named Peyton Manning, and he didn't have a dad in Archie who had been in the league for a long time, I don't know that he would have had that flex. It'll be interesting to see how Burrows handles that. But, look, I think you look at the Bengals, and the one thing that I would have a conversation with is, let me talk to the coach. Let's find out where we're headed, because that could be a determining factor in it, in that whole move.
Why didn't they go after the quarterback's coach at LSU, Joe Brady, who's now the offensive coordinator at Carolina? If you're all in, make it a package deal and say to Joe Burrow, we want to make sure that you're comfortable when you get here and the transition's easier.
Money.
Well, they are cheap, I know. But
that's it. When you ask a question about the Cincinnati Bengals, 99 times out of 100.
But that's another reason not to go there, Shaun.
It is. And, but I will say this, you're the number one pick. That contract is going to get done. You're going to get paid. It's the next contract. What are you doing after that? But That's pretty much slotted nowadays. Rookies, what they make, whether you're the first pick or the fifth pick or the 10th pick, you've got some guidelines as far as where you're going to be. So they don't really have a say in that. But I would say, there's something to be said for that organization and just, look, do I want to spend my career there? And if he's got a chance to try to make a move and somebody's willing to make a trade up for him, by all means, go for it.
The team that has the best chance of pulling off the surprise on the road is Tennessee or Green Bay?
Green Bay Packers. Yeah, I spent a little time this morning, Dan, watching that game from earlier this year. It was Week 12. And, when you kind of think about that game, everybody says, man, they got run out of there, and, the 49ers just destroyed them. I saw some different things this morning when I watched that game. I saw 3 drops in their first 3 possessions. I saw Aaron Rodgers on the very first third down look like he had never seen a simple nickel Sam blitz before, and he panicked and he ended up fumbling the ball. They basically spotted the 49ers 7 points after their first drive. They're down 10-0, and I think the wheels fell off early on them, and they could never get back on the bike. I absolutely expect to see a different Packers team going out there this Sunday, and I expect it to be a different game. This one's going to come down to the end. It's not going to be a blowout. I know the 49ers defense is pretty darn good. This Packers defense, their front rush might be better. Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith have been unblockable at times. So,
wait, you think it's better than the Niners pass rush?
I think their pass rushers can be better. I think Zadarius Smith, he's the most disruptive player in the league right now. He's more disruptive than Bosa. I think if you look at the 49ers across the board, they're probably more talented. But I think when you look at the way the Green Bay Packers are playing up front right now, you could make an argument that they're playing better than the 49ers. The one thing that I will say about this 49ers front, they had 6 sacks against the Vikings. All 6 of those sacks came on a 4-man rush.
I know.
If you can do that, forget about it. The boys back there, look, Richard Sherman's patting himself on the back. Guess what, Sherm? You're a great player, but if those guys aren't doing what they're doing up front, you don't look as good. So if they can get pressure with those front 4 and not have to blitz, it will be a long day for Green Bay.
I'll leave you with this. Derrick Henry, when he runs, when he builds up that head of steam, there are players who don't want to tackle him. And it's kind of creative in how they go about trying not to tackle. You just don't want to feel that. The Giants had Brandon Jacobs, who was probably similar size to Derrick Henry. What is that like, though, to have a physical presence like that where you feel like defensive players are going to go, oh, God, is this going to hurt when I tackle him?
Yeah, I love that you brought up Brandon because he's the first guy I think about whenever I watch Derrick Henry. And it's funny because every week – everybody wanted to try Brandon Jacobs. Oh, yeah, come on, big boy, bring it. I'm coming. First quarter, they're chatting. All of a sudden, the third quarter, you don't hear the chatter from the other side of the ball anymore. People are diving out of the way. They're trying to find a way. Oh, man, I missed my gap. All of a sudden, man, the safeties don't want to insert in the second half. I wonder why that is. You see it week in and week out with Derrick Henry. Every single week, people say, well, we got to stop Derrick Henry. What are we going to do? Well, Dan, how many times have you said load the box or heard load the box? Bring 8 guys in the box. Guess what? Derrick Henry's faced more 8-man boxes this season than any running back in the game, and he's still getting it done. So he's wearing them out, and people don't want to come up and hit the guy. Brandon Jacobs, we used to tell him all the time, look, be patient. In the first and second quarter, everybody's going to they're going to come try to take your legs out. He used to wear these big oversized thigh pads like Earl Campbell because he knew guys are going to try to take him out low because they're not going up high. They don't want to go upstairs and get embarrassed. But by the third and fourth quarter, those dogs weren't barking at all. The one story that comes to mind is in 2008, we were kicking ass and taking names. And we started out 11-1. That was the most fun year I've ever had of playing football. And Brandon Jacobs was a huge part of it. Him, Bradshaw, and Derek Ward. We called them Earth, Wind, and Fire. But I'll never forget, we had rushed for 200 yards, I think, maybe 2 weeks in a row. And our next opponent was the Baltimore Ravens. And Ray Lewis came out on a Wednesday and said, well, they're not going to rush for 200 on us. Well, I'll be damned if we didn't bust that, you know what. And the first play of the game, Brandon Jacobs cut back, ran for 56 yards on the very first play of the game, and I've never talked so much trash in my life as an O-lineman as that game. But because people were talking about how we're going to stop him and slow him down, we were so motivated, and we wore everybody out that day. Jared Johnson, Ray, all of them. They didn't want any part of Brandon Jacobs.
Shaun, great to talk to you. Have a good weekend, and we appreciate your time as always.
All right, appreciate it, boys. I'm going to work on my six-pack.
It's Shaun O'Hara, NFL Network analyst, and NFL Game Day Morning. That'll be Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern on NFL Network.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.